G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel, and today I'm going to be going through my power rankings after round 7. As you can see, I am literally in the middle of nowhere. It looks like I'm in the middle of a jungle. I am in the most random spot in Cairns you could ever see, and the only reason I decided, you know what, let's film this video is as of late the content has been doing really well. I appreciate everyone for getting around my last 2 videos, and after the end of every month I said I would be doing this video. So yeah, as I did after round 2, power rankings, I'm going to go through every team best to worst as of now. It's not necessarily the ladder, it's sort of based on what I reckon the teams are ranked currently from 1 to 18. I think still the best side in the comp has to be the Demons. They, obviously the reigning premiers, they're 7-0. They might not be recording their wins as convincingly as maybe they can later in the year, but they can win these games playing in 2nd, 3rd gear. They're 7-0. They've only had one real outstanding win in my opinion, which is against the Giants, where really it was only that 3rd quarter where they demolished them, but I still have to put them in first. So the best team in the comp at the moment, and I think majority of people watching this can agree the D's are the best side in the comp. In 2nd, I think the Brisbane Lions have to go here, because I said it, I was going to say this previously, whoever won between Brisbane and Sydney would have to go 2nd in the power rankings. I think that makes sense. You got to agree, Brisbane and Sydney are most likely going to be up there in the top 4. The Lions look like a complete side. They look like the next best side below the Demons. And I don't think it's that far off the gap between the D's and the Lions. I mean, if anything, the Lions could arguably be the better side. They've been getting their wins more convincingly. They've been smashing teams. They're able to produce a massive score. They're the highest scoring side in the competition. I think they've scored over 100 points either 4 or 5 times. And right now, I'm going to put Freo in 3rd. As in the power rankings, I genuinely reckon the Dockers are better than the Cats, better than the Swans, and better than the Saints. I think Freo are definitely a dark horse for potentially even the flag. Like, they could be that side that you just never know. They could be a Melbourne. They're playing very similar to Melbourne. The defence is rock solid. They're just playing some really good footy. They obviously knocked off the Cats at GMHBA on the weekend. Sorry if you can hear the birds in the background, but yeah, I've got to put Freo in 3rd. They're looking sublime at the moment. And then in 4th, probably the Swans. I reckon the Swans would be 4th in the power rankings. And I've dropped them down a couple spots because they obviously lost to Brisbane. Freo won, and they just couldn't really find that win. They can have a few shaky games, the Swans. They're not totally convincing, and you know, particularly considering that game was at home, you'd expect that, you know, the Swans win that game at home. So I'll put them in 4th. They're probably going to make the top 4. They're definitely a finals-worthy side. I'm going to put the Saints in 5th. I still rate the Saints. I think we'll definitely make the 8. But that game against the Power was a bit concerning. It was one of the worst games of footy you'll ever see. We only scored 42, 4 goals, 18. I'm going to blame the goal king on the conditions in Cairns. It was not great at all. I think definitely we're capable of bouncing back. Like next week against Melbourne's going to be a massive game. But I think the Saints currently are in 5th, and I'm going to go the Cats in 6th, because I don't know, you can't totally trust the Cats. They lost to the Dockers, they lost to Hawthorn, and they lost to Sydney by a decent amount. Like, they can have really good performances where they can completely smash teams like North and Essendon, and then have those poor performances where they drop to sides that they should be beating, particularly at home. I'm not too sure about the Cats. Do I think they make the top 4? They're definitely capable, but right now they're in a strange position that it's sort of hard to know where they're going to sit or how to judge them. But they're a top 8 side, but right now I think they're probably 6th in the power rankings. And I think after the win against North Melbourne, we'd put Carlton in 7th. They're 5-2. Not too many people would have expected Carlton to start off that well. I know they haven't been as impressive as they were early on in the last few weeks. You know, obviously that game against Gold Coast and Freo, and then that unconvincing win against Port. But they got a 50-point win against North. I know it is North Melbourne, but it gives them some confidence. They look like a good side this year. You know, their midfield, their strong suit. Their forward line, when working, is one of the most dangerous in the comp. You got Harry Mackay and Curnow up forward. Yeah, Carlton, I think, are in 7th. And then I'll probably chuck Collingwood in 8th. Right now, I think the Pies are slotting in 8th spot. Their wins haven't been against amazing sides. They beat Gold Coast, Adelaide, Essendon. You know, those sides, they aren't like the best sides in the comp. They're middle to low range sides, but the way the Pies are playing under Craig McRae, they can kick a big score. They're dangerous. They're exciting. 4-3. They're in the 8 currently. I think it'd be a bit dirty not to have him in the 8, or at least 9 or 10th in the power rankings. So I think currently Pies are in the 8. And 9th, do we go Richmond or Bulldogs? I think just if you beat any team by 109, even if it's West Coast, you've got to be elevated a few spots in the power rankings. And right now, Richmond, they're looking all right. They haven't been amazing, I'll be honest with you. Before the game against West Coast, they were shaky. The odds were only like $2.20 to win. But I thought definitely the Tigers, they played their best footy on the weekend, completely annihilated the Eagles, kicked a score of 165, I think it was. There are still holes for the Tigers, like their defence isn't great. They lost to Adelaide, they were poor against St Kilda, average against Melbourne. Tigers are definitely not back to their best. They're far from winning a premiership at the moment, but there's still definitely a finals chance. And if they can play like they did against West Coast, I know it was against West Coast, but if they play their footy like that, they'll win a lot more games and they'll be a pretty good side. In 10th spot, I think I'm going to chuck in the Dogs. The Dogs have been a very disappointing side this year. They're 3-4, but they were average against Richmond. Just their goal kicking let them down in that one. Just pathetic against Adelaide, really. Who else did they lose to? They lost to the D's and lost to the Blues in round 2. So I think for the Dogs, though, the top 4 is probably out of the equation, and now it's just getting that final spot, which I think is probably going to happen. I didn't watch any of the game against Essendon, but they definitely looked a far better side than the Bombers. The Bombers, they're in the mud, and we'll get to them a bit later on, but they just have to win that, and they did. If they want to make the top 4, they got to get some wins. Bank wins. They got to bank wins against the top sides, and potentially we might see where the Dogs are at after June. But I'm going to have them in 10th for now, and I think Hawthorn go in 11th. It's quite harsh having a side that almost beat Melbourne and have been very promising so far this year in 11th, but they are again 3-4, and if we're going to rank Bulldogs and Hawthorn, I think right now Bulldogs are still a slightly better side if we're basing on last year, but I'll be honest with you, Hawthorn have definitely been more impressive than the Dogs this year. They lost against the D's by 10. Could have won that game, potentially. I didn't watch it, but you know they had their chances. They knocked off the Cats, Port by a ton at home. Aside from that game against St Kilda and that last half and a bit against Sydney, they've been a very solid side, the Hawks, and been very impressive under Sam Mitchell. And 12th is probably going to have to be between Port, Giants. I don't think I can go Giants. I'm probably going to put Port in 12th. Is it a harsh call? A couple of weeks ago, we were having Port in the bottom 3, but right now they've turned things around with 2 wins in a row. An extremely convincing win against the West Coast Eagles, albeit they are one of the worst sides in the comp. They just sort of snatched victory against the Saints, where no one could buy a goal. It was a 9 goals, 31 combined. It was one of the worst games of footy, as I touched on before. They've won 2 in a row, and their last 10 quarters of footy have been quite impressive. Again, that second half against Carlton is probably just why I'm going to chuck them in the 12th spot. I think they're doing okay, the Power, and you can't write them off yet in this season. They have the quality and potential to make the final still, which is not really what I want, but there's a chance. 13th spot, I'm going to go the Crows. I know the Crows got heavily beaten against the Giants, but if we just wipe that away, they have been super impressive, the Crows, and their fans should be pretty pleased with what they've done so far this year. They've won 3 games, and 2 games they lost by under a goal, so they could have been 5-2 if they got things their own way. Obviously, we're really impressed with the Dogs and the Tigers, who aren't no easy beats, that is for sure. But it wasn't that loss against the Giants, that demolishing really by 10 goals against the Giants. It's going to have him drop a few ranks in the power rankings because it was a little bit disappointing, particularly at home. I'm going to put the Giants in 14th spot. Now, if any Giants fans are watching this, I don't think there'd be too many, but the reason why I don't have them above the Crows is because overall as a season, the Crows have been more impressive. I think we can all agree on that. I know the Giants had a really good win, and you never know, could that kickstart something for the Giants, because they just needed that second win against the Crows by 60 points, which they got. But yeah, overall, they've been very disappointing, 2-5. I definitely expected them to start the season better than they have. And Leon Cameron looks almost a certainty now to get sacked at the end of the year. But I think definitely the Giants needed that win to just kickstart something. I don't know who they have in the next few games, but maybe they could turn things around. I still don't think they'll make finals, but they've been a disappointing side, but that win just helps a lot, I reckon. And 15th, I'm probably going to go the Suns. Suns have been in games, but in the same time, they sort of haven't. Against the Pies, they were sort of in it, but just never looked like threatening or hitting a lead, and the same with the Lions. They just never were able to string consecutive goals in a row, and it's just a tough one for the Suns because they probably should be doing better than what they're performing, but they haven't been woeful. They haven't been absolutely woeful where they're getting completely obliterated, but they just aren't able to find the wins. Just the 2 so far this year and 1 win of their last 6 games. But they haven't been woeful, and I think they definitely have been more impressive than the Bombers, which shows a lot because the Bombers made the finals last year. And if I would have told you right now that a Gold Coast side 2-5 would have still been more impressive than the Bombers before the start of the season, Bombers fans would be telling me that I'm an absolute idiot. But look where we are now. And Essendon, 1-6 now they are. Didn't show anything against the Dogs, who weren't outstanding, but who were just a side that needed to get a win. And right now, their season's done. I got no idea what's next for the Bombers. Do they start playing their kids? Do they just focus on developing their players rather than making finals? Because it's going to be almost impossible now. 1-6. They are very far down the pack in making finals. And I think we can all agree right now that the 2 worst sides in the comp have to be either North or West Coast. We're going to have North in 17th, and it's the fact that North Melbourne aren't even last with how poor they've been this season. Every game they seem to lose by over 8 goals. They're uncompetitive. They've had a really poor last month of footy. I think after round 2, they got done by the Lions by 100. They got done by Geelong, Bulldogs by over 60, Carlton by over 50. They only had 1 good game in that patch, which was still a loss against the Swans. Yeah, they're definitely going to be finishing bottom 2 this year. They're not a lot to be excited for right now as a North fan. But 18th, it's going to be West Coast. I knew they were going to be bad this year, but I didn't think they were going to be this bad. Like, they look absolutely abysmal. They look like they just don't even care. West Coast on the weekend, their skills were absolutely abysmal. They conceded like 130 points from turnovers alone. Like, it was one of the worst displays of footy I've seen from a side in a while. That was pathetic, really. West Coast have now been done by 10 goals or more in the last 3 games, and they look absolutely pathetic. They are in a shambles at the moment, West Coast. Yeah, it doesn't look any brighter for them. They've got Brisbane away next week, and then they've got Melbourne the week after. Yeah, West Coast for me, they're the worst side in the comp. At least North are showing something with their losses. West Coast are showing absolutely nothing, and they've been more disappointing as a whole. So there we go, those are my power rankings. Let me know right now where you would have these sides in the comments. I'll have these out every month. Comment below where you think all the teams sit right now after round 7 in the power rankings. And I'll see you soon in my next video. Cheers.